Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to join me today to talk about machine learning and NoSQL. My name is Luke DeBruin. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Couchbase. This will be a technically focused demo. We will talk about the Couchbase platform, but just briefly. So yeah, it should be pretty fun. Let's go over the agenda real quick. So we're going to do that overview. Then we're going to talk about what's new in Couchbase 7.0. It's our best release yet. We have done a ton of TCO improvements. And as you know, a lot of enterprise customers already love Couchbase. They're going to love it even more after this 7.0 release. And then what's new in CB Analytics for 7.0, because that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Then we're going to follow it up with two demos. The first one will be querying and leveraging external data sets within your analytics queries. That is, of course, AWS S3 or Azure Object Store. And you can actually reference this data and manipulate it just as if it was locally on your Couchbase cluster, except that it's an external data set. So you never actually have to ingest it. You don't have to use that valuable disk space that you have. The next demo we'll look at is how you can leverage machine learning models within your analytics queries, which is my favorite one. It's a super cool new functionality that we have, and it allows you to basically do sentiment models, predictions on your operational and external data sets to derive new insight. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with a general Q&A, a live Q&A actually, where we'll stop this recording and me and my team will be within the chat. You can ask us questions, anything you like. Follow-up questions as far as Couchbase. So I like to start with this slide because oftentimes when I talk to prospects or new people who are thinking about Couchbase, they really have never heard of us, which is amazing considering how prevalent we are in the space. And these are some of our customers. I'm sure you recognize some of their names. We have a presence in each of the main industry verticals. 3 of the top 3 credit reporting companies use us, 3 of the top 3 GDS companies. I won't bore you, for too long on this slide, but I did want to throw it out there. So let's talk about the platform a little bit. So we like to consider ourselves the modern database for enterprise applications, and actually a database platform. And the reason we call ourselves that is because we just don't give you a typical database. Of course we store items and we send those back to clients, but we do so much more than that as well. We do start with key value store. That's what gives us the incredible performance that we're known for. And we build out feature functionality onto that, including SQL access to your non-structured data, to your JSON data. We have a SQL query language called NoSQL. It is SQL. It just has additional capabilities to interact and manipulate nested structures, complex data structures like arrays, and things like that, where you'll find often in unstructured data. On top of that, we also have a mobile stack as well. We offer a lightweight embedded database called CB Lite. That's for disconnected environment use cases. Carnival Cruise Line uses us for this right now for their ships. And it can do peer-to-peer sync, or it can actually do device to your kind of edge database sync as well. We also have a search engine which provides full text search capabilities out of the box. You don't need to bolt on a third party for that. You don't need to pay for Elasticsearch. We give you that right out of the box. It's great for product catalogs. It's great for those search terms that you want to pass through and get a fast response to. And then lastly, we offer real-time analytics. And this is what we're going to focus for most of our time on today, is features and functionalities in there. Now that's also SQL based, and there's no ETL process. You do get parallel processing, which means your analytics nodes will actually run independent of your operational workloads. So your marketing guys, your data science teams can actually go to their heart's content. Whatever they throw at it, even if it's a terrible query, it's not going to drain on your resources that you're using for your operational use cases for your application access. So let's talk about what's new in 7.0 and analytics. So these are all the features that came new with 7.0. And there's a lot of them, and I won't talk about all of them. We just don't have the time. But one of the important ones is the addition of scopes and collections. Previously, we had the bucket layer, right? And you can consider a bucket as almost a database in the Oracle or relational sense. We've also added scopes and collections in between that give you a more similar segmentation to like your relational schema in tables, right? So now our legacy customers, a lot of our customers use us for legacy modernization, right? They have this data, it's draining their resources in these old legacy outdated databases that can't scale. Well, now we have a structure which allows for them to migrate their data quite easy and actually segment it. The additional thing that gives us is also multi-tenancy support. So you can have multiple applications with different permissions and different roles accessing subsets of the data within your buckets. So multi-tenancy from a microservices perspective. The last thing I want to mention on here is that we have improved performance across the board. We were already performance. It was our namesake really was our performance and scalability, but we've increased it even more in 7.0, almost by 40% in some cases. So it's a great time to adopt Couchbase as your platform in your enterprise. And these are what came out for analytics in 7.0. Now, some of these are developer preview. And actually, it's funny because the two things we're going to be demoing today are both developer preview. And what that means is that you can play with it, you can interact with it, but we don't recommend that you're throwing it out there on a production cluster yet. We don't recommend that you're implementing it in any of your processes yet. It is coming out to GA. It's just going to be a few months. So if you do get interested in these today, fear not, they'll be GA very soon. But just to run through these real quick, obviously collections and scopes, right? That's pervasive through our whole platform. We've added collections and scopes. User-defined functions, which we're going to see today a little bit. We have new rollup function and new cube function. We have integrate Python ML models, that's a dev preview. And we have Azure blob storage with external data set, that's also a dev preview. Okay, so let's jump into the fun stuff. Let's get to the demo. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is Azure external data sets demo. Some of the benefits I'd like to call out before we get into this is obviously data enrichment. That's the scenario we're going to be working through today. A user has a limited data set and they want to expand that and join that with additional enrichment. They want to add value to that data set so they can gain insight from it. It's also dynamic data access. You don't have to ingest the data into your cluster. Yeah, a lot of enterprises are already using object store. It's a cheap solution. It's a great place to keep data that is infrequently accessed. Well, with Couchbase, you can actually access it in real time and bring it into your operational data as well. And then parallel query processing. This is unique to our analytics architecture. It's basically a distributed fashion, just like our database, where you're leveraging all of your analytics nodes to parallel process those nodes to increase speed and response time for your queries. Okay, so the challenge for today, the first challenge, I should say, we have a travel application. The user is currently managing an airport information data set. So we're going to go into the UI and we're going to see they have an airport data set. It's got 1,000 airports in it, I think, at this point. And they want to enrich that data with some additional data sets so they can better target a marketing campaign for hotels, like a partnership marketing campaign. And on top of that, they want to get additional information on the city so they can target by population, things like that. Our data sets that we're going to be using is airports. That's internal. We already have it. And then we're going to be using 2 external data sets, hotels, and then city details. Okay. So this is the overall process that we're looking at. We're going to take a look at the process and then we're going to jump in and actually show you how to do it. So the first step is setting up your link to your cloud object store, whether that's AWS, whether that's Azure. You have to show Couchbase, how do I get to that data? And that's that process. Then within the analytics UI, we're going to create what we call an external analytics collection. That's just a way to say, okay, I have my link. to my cloud. Now, what data set am I actually trying to work with? And then we're going to use it. Simple as 1, 2, 3, right? I used Dr. Evil here because it's in tech, it's never easy as 1, 2, 3. But in this case, it's pretty close to 1, 2, 3. Let's go see. Okay, let's pop over and take a look where we are. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create the link to Azure. And for that, we do need this here. Now, oh, that's why I was going over there. So I do want to mention this real quick. Let's go over to Couchbase. This is our Couchbase UI. If you've never used it, it's great. It's very intuitive. It's very easy to work with. But I wanted to mention the Azure blob storage is in dev preview, but AWS S3 is not. So there are two different ways to set up this link. AWS is much easier. And in a few months, it will be the same for Azure, but I wanted to show you how easy it was. All we do is we go over to the right-hand side here, and we say we're going to add a remote link. We're going to say my Azure S3, and here we go. For this, it would be my AWS, but this is setting up an S3 object store link. All you need is your typical credentials that you would use, hit save, and voila, it's going to pop up, and you're going to have access to query and manipulate and work with your AWS data. For Azure, and because this is a technical demo, it's a little bit more complicated, and we're going to have a little bit more fun. We have to actually send off a post to our analytics cluster. And we'll go ahead and go through what this request looks like when we throw it into the terminal, just so you guys are familiar with it. Okay, so we're sending off a post. I'm running this CB cluster locally on my MacBook with about 1 gig or so. So we're not going to see exceptional performance, but I want you to imagine what this would be like if we were using it on a production 25 node cluster. So let's run through this. Here is just my local address. This is going to throw this link into the analytics subdirectory. It's an Azure blob, we know that. This is the account name here, the storage account name, my Azure account name. And this is the account key that's actually provided by the particular storage container in Azure. Now, if there's any hackers out there, I am going to rotate these keys. So, don't bother. There's nothing in there of value anyways, but I just wanted to save you the time. All right, so let's go ahead and fire this off. We got a 200 response, super quick, super easy. If we go over here, I bet we're going to see this guy pop up. And there it is. Let's go ahead and expand that. My Azure link, Azure Blob. That's your gateway. That's your entrance into your Azure Blob storage. Okay, so that's step one. We have that. Now what we're going to do is populate some of our Azure Blob storage with data, so we actually have something to play with. The first step is creating a container. On AWS, this would be a folder, I believe. And let's do hotels first. I'm just going to call this hotel container. We need to change the access to anonymous read access. This is not public as far as anybody can read this once you designate it this way. This is just, you still need to have the access key, so don't worry about that. But we're going to go ahead and open it up for Couchbase to access. We're going to create it. Here's our container. And at the same time, we're going to do our city container as well, because if you remember, we want to get city demographics at the same time. Okay, there's our containers. Throw some data in there. So we're in city first. Now this data set that I got, I just pulled off of a US census, I think it was census data set. It's free. And it really, just runs through US cities and gives you some fun facts about it. Let's make sure there's nothing we're going to miss. We are in blob storage, and we're good. Let's go ahead and send that up. All right, there we are. We have our city details. Let's go ahead and go do hotels as well. Okay, that one was quick. It was small. Okay, so we have our two blob storage data sets, right? Now, most organizations or you guys would probably have a bunch of data already. You wouldn't have to go add this. But if you were going through the enrichment process and you had a specific goal, you might actually go through this scenario. Okay, so let's pop over into here. Let's do a refresh. You're not going to see it populated yet because there's still one more step we have to do, and that's create this external analytics collection. It's already populated in here because I was preparing for the demo, but let's run through some of the details of it. Here is your data set name. This is what you're going to define. It can be anything that you want. In this case, hotels make sense. That's what you're going to reference in your subsequent queries when you're trying to access that data set. This is your data container name. If you remember over here, that's our actual container, hotels container. This is your Azure link. That's the connection. So it's saying, get me hotels container data set on or through my Azure link. And then you provide some format tips in the next line. We're using JSON, but just to call out, we do support CSV and TSV. JSON is the best. Couchbase loves JSON. We love CSV too. But with CSV, you have to define the columns during this external data set collection. So if you're using JSON, it's just easier. But CSV is just a matter of, giving your standard kind of schema of your columns. The include here allows you to segregate which data you want to pull in. A lot of people, of course, have a lot of different data sets within a container or a folder, and they don't want to pull all of it in. This lets you do matching, as you can see, wildcard if you need to, just to target which data you actually want to work with. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute this to success. Now, you should actually see this guy pop up. Let's just double check and validate. Yeah, there we go. We have hotels here. Let's expand. Container, hotels container, JSON. There we go. Let's do the same for cities. I actually think I have this pre-made. Save us some time. Yeah, here we go. Okay, and let's execute that. Success. Let's give a refresh just to make sure. And here we go. So we have our data set. So now we have our local data set, which is airport here. And then we're going to join it or enrich it with two external blobs, city details and hotels. Now let's see here. Let's go ahead and start with our base command, or our base query, I should say, where we join the hotels, right? First step in our process, we want to see what hotels are close to our airports. Okay, so we're looking at Palm Springs International Airport, and if we scroll down, we're going to see external hotels. That came from the blob storage, and this is going to tell us what hotels are actually within the same city as the airports that are listed. That's step one. So we have an enriched data set partner where the user actually knows now, okay, if I wanted to target a partnership with hotels, these would be the ones. But let's go ahead and do one more additional join. Let's bring in the city data as well. City details, and I'm going to call this external city, just so we can keep track of which ones are external and which ones are local. I'm going to join this local airport city. Now, of course, this is a very basic query, guys. There's probably some SQL people out there and being like, oh my gosh, you can't do better than this. But it's just to show the use case. So let's go. Actually, we need external city here. And the power of it, I guess I would say. All right, we're going to join that on city as well. Let's fire this off. Let's see what we get. Now we're doing a three-way join. Two externals, one local, and we're scanning through about 30,000 different documents to pull this through. And of course, we're running on a 1 gig machine. So, 3.69 seconds, not the best, but remember as well, this is a dedicated hardware resource. So we're not actually pulling on your operational data hardware at this point, resources, I should say. Okay, so we have local airport. Clear this. Now we're looking at San Luis Obispo, if I pronounce that right, in Los Angeles. We have some hotels got matched as well, $49 to $69 a night. That's not bad, right? And then we have our city details, right? So now we're seeing population, we're seeing density. Now a user could run on a targeted basis. Of course, if I added where city equals X, they could actually target their market campaigns to all the different hotels around their airport data set. Okay, so that's demo one. That's external data sets. We're going to jump right into Python machine learning. Okay, so to go over some of the benefits similar to our analytics feature, this also provides its own kind of unique set of benefits. The large one, of course, being leverage ML models, existing or new, to gain more additional insight, and not just insight as from a static data set, but from predictive insight or sentiment model insight. It also allows your data science teams to run their ML queries against your operational data. You don't have to wait 3 months anymore for your data science team to provide insight for your marketing campaign. They can actually have access to the real-time data at the time, run their models right at the data, and immediately get that insight. And then the same benefit as previous parallel query processing. That's just an architectural feature that we have in our analytics service. Okay, so the challenge number 2. We have a movie review website, right? The app owner currently manages a movie review website where users post their own movie reviews on the website. The app owner would like to predict or derive what the user's sentiment was based off of their textual content. So when they write out a review and they say, this movie was horrendous, the app wants to say, wow, so based off of that, this person's probably given it a thumbs down or a thumbs up or a thumb sideways. And we're going to use Rotten Tomatoes because they had a great free data set. So our sentiments, our qualifiers are going to be rotten, fresh, and guaranteed fresh. Those are the 3 levels that we're actually looking for. Now, easy as 1, 2, 3. Every time I see that meme, I can't help but to hear that song. So simple again, step 1, train the model, package it, and deploy it to CB Analytics. For the sake of brevity and the time that we're running up against here, we're not going to discuss that this time, but we are going to go over it and how easy it actually is to do. Step 2 would be create the UDF that references your trained model, very similar to what we did with the previous demo. And then we're going to call it, and we're going to reference it and test it out. So to go over the process of training the model, packaging it, deploying it, we're going to go through these bullet points real quick. I do want to reference that we have this out at Couchbase Labs. So if you want to go pick this up, if you want to play with it, feel free. That's publicly available. All the code is there. All the resources are there. And you can ask me for that link later in the chat room if you like. So we take that application that's model UDF there, and we can actually go look at it. I think we have some time here. Here we go. Okay, here is our training application. It is actually fairly simple. It's not that complicated. It's going to take in the Rotten Tomatoes data, the actual review data, and it's going to try and train that sentiment based off of that data. So you can see right here, these are your links. This is what their critics use as rotten, fresh, or certified fresh. And then this is the critic feedback. So it's trying to find a mapping between these two, so it can take additional text and make the same mapping. Go ahead and pop back. So once we've run it through that, it outputs what we call a sentiment model, right? Now that sentiment model is going to be packaged via Shiv. It's just a Python packaging utility, and it's going to take that sentiment model and all the Python dependencies, because Python is particular, and it's going to package that into a zip file, Python zip file. Then you're going to post that the same way that you posted your Azure link up to your analytics server. Now, the difference is you're going to post it to the library. So you're actually creating a sentiment library in your analytics cluster that, of course, then your queries can reference and say, I need to call this method. Let me call that sentiment library. And we're actually going to go do that right now. So hop over to our local test here. Now, you can see that we have a couple data sets here that we're going to use. We have movie reviews and we have movies. Movies is what you're keyed off of. That's your list that has just a raw list of movies with some details. And movie reviews are your user reviews. That's the data that we're going to try and gain insight into. Go ahead and pop back here. The first step we have to do, just like the last one, is create, I'll just go get my command here. There we go, create analytics function. And this is actually a UDF. So the same way that you would create, currency conversion UDF, you're actually creating this UDF that you can call as well. And let's walk through this real quick. I'm going to add an or replace. So get review sentiment, this is the method you're going to call to execute that command to get your sentiment value back. Sentiment is just an alias, and model.sentiment, get sentiment, is the function within the Python application. So you're going to be passing through that text into model.getSentiment, and it's going to return back our machine learning. Sentiment library is what we referenced when we uploaded it. That's over in the deck right here. That's what we called it. It's a user-defined variable. You can call it whatever you like. Let's go ahead and execute this. Okay, success. Very quick. Now let's see if we can actually run it through some paces. I'm going to find it here. A lot of hotels. A lot of hotels. Okay. Is this the one I want? All right, let's take a look at this query, guys. All right, so use default is just a way for us to say use default scope. It's not any SQL thing that you're looking at and saying, like, what is that? So we're going to select star, which means we're going to iterate through the movies data set. So for each movie, we're going to go through and we're going to say, all right, let's pass in the user reviews for that movie. And I want you to predict back to me their sentiment. So let's go ahead and exit. We're going to limit it to 10 just for the sake of time. Okay, let's see here. So here is our review. Let's see where our sentiment. Okay, so this, we predicted rotten for this one based off of review content, which is right here. There's nothing resembling a spark in this film anywhere. So that's pretty accurate. So it looks like we're up and running. So that's pretty good. Let's see what the second one is. It's the same. Oh, 12 Angry Men. That's a good one. Okay. He said fresh. Oh, we said rotten. Oh, man. So this does happen. And when you're training your ML models, you got to remember, when you're referencing them within your analytics query, it's only going to be as good as the data you pass through in the training process that you used. So we ran this through, I think, with 900, no, that was airports. It's a very small amount of movies and reviews. So the model, going to be a little bit finicky. So let's strip away this other stuff. Let's see if we can't have some fun here. All right, we're just going to play with the method as it is. Let's see, because we can pass text in here. You can use these in any of your queries. Once you create the ML model, you can leverage them pretty easily. So let's do some testing here. Let's be terrible. Let's hope, fingers crossed, everybody, for rotten. Ooh, all right, we got rotten. Let's try love. It's got to be guaranteed fresh. Certified fresh. Excellent, excellent. Let's try masterpiece. I doubt anyone used masterpiece, but let's try certified fresh. There we go. And that's pretty much it, guys. So with the combination of external data sets and machine learning, CV Analytics is becoming quite a robust analytics solution. So, by all means, check it out. Ask us any questions in the chat if you have any. And also, we're always happy to come and talk to you at your company or do a presentation on the product as well. So that's an option as well. Thank you so much for having me here. This has been a lot of fun, and I'll talk to you soon.